1MDB, also known as One Malaysia Development Berhad, was a Malaysian state fund that was set up in 2009 with a promising future to promote the country's development, but ended up being a personal piggy bank to some officials that allegedly involved celebrities, super yachts, and billions of dollars going missing. It might sound like something out of a Hollywood film, but no. The story of how One Malaysia Development Berhad disappeared is a very real story. So, what went wrong with Malaysia's 1MDB fund? Let's find out. But before we continue, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be the first to be notified of new behind-the-business videos that we post every week. Let's begin. The 1MDB fund has become one of the world's biggest corruption scandals of all time. The whole situation actually resulted in a complete overturn of the Malaysian government, while Najib Razak, his wife Rosmah Mansor, and a bunch of other associates were actually arrested for their fraud. But what exactly is the problem? Well, according to the US Justice Department, out of the $8 billion that the fund raised through bond sales, more than half was stolen. And that's what led to a series of investigations against Razak regarding election spending and deal-making. That, along with the lack of transparency with the fund, is what has led to tons of criticism from people all over the world who want to figure out how and why things went wrong. Now, it's important to understand that all the money that this fund raised was supposed to be used for development projects in Malaysia. However, what really happened was that the millions of dollars that were raised were actually stolen from 1MDB in an elaborate scheme that of course involved Najib and his partners. The leaked financial documents for the fund reveal that these funds were siphoned off into bank accounts in countries like Switzerland, Singapore, and even the US. The money was then used to buy luxury assets, real estate, hotels, private jets, art by Picasso and Monet, and was even used in financing Hollywood films. Najib himself was exposed when, all of a sudden, about $731 million appeared in his bank account just before the 2013 elections. This money was allegedly used by the former prime minister to pay off politicians. His credit card bills and millions were also spent on his wife's shopping sprees. Not just that, but overseas, the money was also used to fund lavish lifestyles for other members of the fund's advisory board, including one of the consultants that was brought in to oversee the 1MDB fund's operations, Malaysian businessman Zhou Lo. Under Zhou's supervision, money from the fund was used to purchase property worth billions of dollars in Beverly Hills and Manhattan, including an apartment that was once owned by Beyoncé and Jay-Z, $250 million on a super yacht called the Equanimity. Millions of dollars was also used to purchase lavish gifts for other people, including an original Picasso painting for Leonardo DiCaprio, $8 million worth of diamonds for supermodel Miranda Kerr, and a private birthday party for Lo, where Jamie Foxx, Chris Brown, Ludacris, Pharrell Williams, and Britney Spears were hired to perform. Millions of dollars were also given to Najib's stepson Riza Aziz, who used them to fund the Oscar-nominated film The Wolf of Wall Street, which was ironically about financial fraud produced by his production company Red Granite Pictures. Now, you might be wondering how easy it is to embezzle money. Well, that was just what Zhou Lo was in charge of, transferring money from the fund into personal accounts, making it all look like business transactions. And here's how he did it. According to the US Department of Justice, Zhou Lo would set up bank accounts under fake company names, which resembles some pretty big and pretty legit financial firms. An example of it would be BlackRock Commodities Global Limited, that to the untrained eye would resemble the global investment manager BlackRock Inc. This through investigators of When Money. The next method employed by Zhou Lo was the usage of trust accounts of US law firms, which combined with the laws on client confidentiality, made the money coming in almost impossible to trace. One other way used to get funds out of 1MDB and into US bank accounts was to transfer the money to multiple bank accounts until the source of the funds were untraceable. With these three methods, Zhou was able to sneak about $4.5 billion out of Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund. To make matters worse, the American multinational investment bank Goldman Sachs was also found complicit in the entire scandal. Goldman Sachs has been investigated by 14 countries for its involvement in the 1MDB bond issues. The Justice Department said on Thursday that Goldman violated the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which bans U.S. companies from paying foreign government officials for help in getting or keeping business. Malaysian prosecutors also said that the bank misled investors over the bond sales. In its defense, Goldman Sachs claimed that certain members of the former Malaysian government and 1MDB officials lied to it about how proceeds from the bond sales would be used. Goldman will pay a $2.3 billion fine to the Justice Department and other regulators, and a further $600 million in disgorgement of ill-gotten gains to settle the U.S. probe and avoid a criminal conviction at the group level. In addition to that, the company will also pay $3.9 billion to Malaysia for dropping all charges against the bank. Goldman Sachs units will also pay $350 million to Hong Kong's financial regulator, $122 million to Singapore's government, and £96.6 million to the UK's Financial Conduct Authority. This alleged embezzlement of money went on till 2015 without anyone discovering it, which is when British journalist Claire Castle-Brown got a hold of some leaked documents with all the details of the fraud. The Wall Street Journal was also given the same documents. This is when the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Agency, or MACC, kicked off its investigations. Now, this definitely had Najib panicking, and he did all he could to stop the proceedings. Right when an arrest warrant for Najib was just about to be given out, the Prime Minister acted and the MACC offices were raided, with the 4 officials leading the investigation being sacked. This was, of course, a winning move for Najib. Najib's government was also extremely uncooperative with the investigations taking place in Switzerland, Singapore, and the USA. However, authorities in Asia, Europe, and the US have constantly been working to obtain the money trail from 1MDB, as well as towards asset recovery. The US Justice Department has specially been at the forefront, focusing on bribery, theft, and money laundering. Around 2016, Najib had done everything he could in his power to prove his innocence and put an end to the investigation. However, not everyone was convinced that the former prime minister was being honest. The public's lack of trust in Najib was revealed when the opposition party was elected for the first time in Malaysia's history, with Mahathir Mohamad taking Najib's position. Mohamad immediately fired up the 1MDB investigations once again, and that was the downfall of Najib as we know it. Within days of the election, properties linked to Najib were searched by police. They seized 1,400 necklaces, 567 handbags, 423 watches, 2,200 rings, 1,600 brooches, and 14 tiaras, most of which were thought to belong to Rosmah, worth a total of $273 million. Currently, the former prime minister faces 42 charges across 5 separate trials. And honestly, if he spends decades in prison, that wouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. So far, a verdict has only been announced in relation to his first trial, where he was found guilty of 7 charges, including criminal breach of trust, money laundering, and abuse of power. But even then, Najib is definitely looking at some serious jail time. Najib's second trial is the most significant and deals with 25 charges over the alleged flow of $731 million of 1MDB funds into his bank accounts. This case is ongoing. At the same time, Rosmah has been charged with 17 counts of money laundering, which she pleaded not guilty on. As for the elusive Zhou Lo, he is still on the run and was last seen leaving Macau. There are many rumors surrounding his whereabouts, some claiming he had plastic surgery to avoid detection, other claims that he lives in Macau. But in 2019, he struck a deal with the U.S. Department of Justice to turn over more than $700 million worth of assets, and he is free to go. This just reinforces the notion that there are powerful people out there that don't want the true story of Malaysia 1MDB to be leaked out. Currently, some 1MDB projects are going ahead under the new government, including the plan for a new financial district and a $34 billion property and transport hub. However, the fund in itself has been taken over by the country's finance ministry that's handling its assets and debts. And while Najib and his wife are going to trial, their most prominent partner, Zhou Lo, has completely gone off the radar. He was last seen partying on a Thai island in 2018, and later that year, his yacht that he bought with the embezzled money was seized by the authorities, with Lo nowhere to be found. Since then, it has been rumored that the businessman was switching between staying in the Chinese gambling enclave of Macau, in Bangkok, and in Taiwan so that he could not be found. The 1MDB scandal has helped authorities understand and work on closing all kinds of loopholes in the global financial system. Over the last 3 years, Malaysia has been trying to recover 1MDB funds from global banks, financial institutions, individuals, and other entities it says have caused losses from 1MDB. Since the whole scandal was exposed, the United States has been returning funds it has recovered from seized assets that were allegedly bought with stolen 1MDB money. So far, Malaysia has received $3.89 billion of seized funds. But with investigations still going on, the 1MDB fund will always be remembered as a scandal that completely shook the financial world for ages to come. What would you do if you had Joe Lowe's money in your bank account? Bottles and models? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be the first to be notified of new behind the business videos we post every week. Be inspired, and we will see you in the next one. Since you made it all the way to this point, here are 2 more videos that we know you are going to love. Go on, click on it. You know you want